This
So
conference will now be
today,
recorded.
today we are discussing two talks. Actually, they're talks which you don't read usually. Okay, one is related to maternal autopsy, and another is placental histological abnormality. So it doesn't come in anywhere in your guidelines, and these are the topics which you don't read usually. Uh, and these talks are very lengthy, 7 and 8 pages each talk. So don't go in details of these talks. I am just discussing very important points on this talk. So if you don't read also, it doesn't matter. Okay, so we will discuss these talks today. First of this is why the importance of this talk is, first, actually they have given the maternal death definitions very well here. Okay, so what is the basic definition of maternal death? Is it is a death occurring in woman from conception through up to delivery and up to 6 weeks postpartum. But in UK, all death up to 1 year postpartum they are notified, but not all will be centrally reviewed. The deaths are categorized as direct, indirect, and coincidental. So direct death is, it is caused by disease process specific to pregnancy and delivery. So examples of this direct maternal death, because you will usually get SBAs or EMQs on this. Okay, so the examples of direct maternal death are any infection related to pregnancy. So any sepsis related to pregnancy or abortion. Okay, hypertensive diseases of the pregnancy, peripartum hemorrhage, death from anesthesia, amniotic fluid embolism, deaths in early pregnancy, whether it is a ectopic or anything, peripartum cardiomyopathy. So remember, well, heart disease is indirect death, but peripartum cardiomyopathy is a direct death. So this one thing you should remember. Another thing is gestational trophoblastic disease. This is also maternal death. Postpartum psychotic suicide. For that matter, any suicide is direct maternal death. Okay, because this is the most commonly asked question. So any suicide is a direct maternal death. Death resulting from venous thromboembolism, that is also direct death. Okay, so if it is pre-existing VT also, it is a direct death. Okay, now indirect maternal death, the diseases that occurred in women who are not pregnant, but the diseases which are exacerbated by pregnancy critically affect the pregnancy, or where the treatment is complicated by pregnancy. So yes, they were before, they might be existing before the pregnancy, or these are other not related to the pregnancy systematically, but they will the pregnancy will affect those diseases like cardiac diseases other than peripartum cardiomyopathy. So any cardiac disease other than peripartum cardiomyopathy is an indirect sepsis like influenza, HIV. So these are indirect. Okay, indirect death. Neurological disease other than VT. Okay, so stroke not related to VT, that is not cavernous sinus thrombosis, it is indirect. Okay, immunological disorders, gastrointestinal, renal, endocrine, pulmonary, liver. Okay, so all these diseases which are not related to pregnancy. So in liver disease, acute fatty liver of pregnancy and health comes under direct, but other liver diseases they come under indirect. Primary pulmonary hypertension and diseases which involving bone marrow or solid organ transplantation. So any graft rejection or any this thing, it comes under indirect. Okay. Now coincidental. So coincidental, the death which is resulting from diseases unrelated to pregnancy. So it can be accident, homicide, drug overdose, alcoholism, and remember well, cancers. So cancers come in coincidental maternal death. Any fatal cancer, it comes under coincidental, apart from gestational trophoblastic neoplasia. Okay. Now, what is the proportion of autopsies in UK? So UK, it has one of the most lowest maternal mortality rates, but it has the highest autopsy rates after such death. So 84% of maternal deaths, they undergo autopsy. Why they undergo autopsy? So basically, the IMRAS, which reviews all maternal deaths in UK. So the review process of a notified maternal death by IMRAS, it depends on. So first process of that is review of the autopsy report by expert pathologist. Okay, so they will review the autopsy report, the cause, what is given in the certificate, whether it is to the confirmed by the autopsy or not. Okay, or it suggests other pathology. And then clinical review panel, they will evaluate. So what we say, it is an internal inquiry, okay, which occurs in that case, and they will find out if there are any negligence or there was any lapses that can be, for that remedies can be done, okay. So these things, so first there will be the review of the autopsy report and then the clinical panel review regarding that or death, to find out if there are any lapses and whether any remedial measures can be taken. And another thing is, any death, it requires a certificate for cause of death, correct? Any death requires a certificate of cause of death, and it should be given by attending doctor if they are able to state the cause. So what happens in maternal case? Most of the cases, if it is not possible to give the direct cause of death, so there will be the coroner investigates that death, okay. If the cause of death is not possible, then coroner investigates that case, and in UK, one in 6 of all death, they will result in medico-legal autopsy. Okay. So if the coroner has decided to do the autopsy, no legal procedure can stop that. No relative can stop that. You have to give this thing for autopsy. Okay. You have to give the willingness for autopsy. No legal process can stop that autopsy if coroner gives the statement for autopsy. So 1 in 6 of all death, they result in medical legal autopsy. So why they have done this thing? Because they have find out that inquiries are useful and they have changed the practice over years. So when they have started this IMRAS, they have find so many reasons or for that death. So for that remedial measures can be taken, and that has come to the conclusion, and they have finally resulted in decreased maternal mortality. So they are in the opinion that if they conduct the maternal autopsy, they may find some causes that can be preventable. Okay. And what happens, another factor for autopsy is maternal deaths are so rare in UK. So most of the time relatives think that there is something must have gone wrong or some medical error can be there. So to find out that, they gives the consent for the autopsy. So what are the reasons for coroner inquiry in general? I'm not talking about maternal death, but in what cases usually the coroner inquiry is required? So any violent or unnatural death. Any violent or unnatural death goes for the coroner inquiry. When the cause of death is unknown, so that happens in maternal death. Most of the time, is cause is unknown. There can be sudden death where the cause remains unknown. So this is the most common reason for coroner inquiry in case of maternal death. While when the disease is died in the custody or in state detention, including psychiatric hospitals. So in that case, you have to go for coroner inquiry. But maternal death most commonly because it is the cause of death is not known. Now, for the autopsy is not required for some cases. So that is one thing is where the cause of death can be given directly. The doctor can give accurate cause of death, like in case of fatal cancers or sometimes in case of accidents or these things where the cause is very direct. So there is very low autopsy rate in case of coincidental deaths where the cause can be found correctly. And in the IMRAS system, what happens? The expert pathologists also review the case to provide their opinion whether the autopsy required or not. So usually before autopsy only, the expert pathologist opinion is taken whether this case requires autopsy and or not. And in most coincidental deaths, usually the pathologists give the opinion as not necessary because it is not necessary. It is very clear-cut death, cause of death. Now, difficulties in conducting autopsies are finding expert pathologists because they may question you afterwards. So that most of the pathologists, actually the number of death in a year is hardly 50 to 60. So it's very difficult to get the training for new pathologists. So in UK, it has become day by day, it is becoming difficult to finding expert pathologists for this autopsy. Also, the places where the adequate facilities for dissection, preservation, and everything is available. And sometimes time to transfer to the expert center. So all these are difficulties in conducting the maternal autopsies. Now, exactly what is done during the autopsy? So it can be either complete autopsy, that is with head and brain also, dissection of head and brain, or sometimes it can be below neck autopsy. Below neck autopsy means where you are completely sure that when the cause of death doesn't lie in head or brain, so in that case you can do below neck autopsy. Also, when the placenta is already delivered, so it is better if the maternal death occurs, if you have that placenta, better to preserve that placenta. So the specimen which are not with the maternal dead body, if these are necessary, like if you have done hysterectomy, peripartum hysterectomy has been done and death has occurred after that. So histopathology of uterus and placenta should be given along with that of autopsy report. Now, so most of the times this forensic toxicology specimens, so specimens are stored for the histological review also and toxicological review also. So when you want to do this toxicology level, most of the time the level of anesthetic drugs in the blood, they are not informative. So usually it is worth measuring blood mast cell tryptase. It is an SBA in that strategy, remember well. So blood mast cell tryptase, they are very high. If they are very high, they indicate that anaphylactic reaction usually to the drugs. Okay. So whenever you are suspecting any unnatural or any sudden death or any toxicology or any suspicious death, it is better to do blood mast cell tryptase level. Okay. So, and the high level indicates that acute anaphylactic reaction to the drug. Usually when the naked autopsy is there, so whenever you can give the direct cause from the autopsy itself, no organ preservation is required. So in that case, result usually takes 1 week. Okay. While when the histology or toxicology studies are required, it usually takes 3 months to get the autopsy result. Now, what are the organ and sample preservations are required in case of maternal autopsies? So first is, usually organs are retained because they are very important in case of when you don't find out any reason on the naked autopsy. It's better to preserve the organs and take the specimens for toxicology also. Okay, because if you don't find any direct reason, so what are the specimens should be collected? So if you are suspecting any septic focus, okay, so for that urine, blood and cerebrospinal fluid should be taken for microbiological culture. So blood, urine, CSF and any septic focus, it should be sampled for culture. While for toxicology, you have to take blood, urine and vitreous samples. Okay. Blood, urine and vitreous samples should be taken for toxicological analysis. It is also a strategy SPA. And this toxicology sampling is mandatory in case of suspected drug overdose and also in case of sudden and unexpected maternal death in the community. So for these things, the blood, urine and vitreous sample should be taken. So what happens after autopsy? So in case if there is still the reason is not confirmed, so it leads to the inquest. Okay, police inquest, it leads to 44% when the cause of death is not clear. But when the cause of death is clear by autopsy report, usually the pathologist, the expert pathologist give cause of death and they will usually give the death certificate. And usually for any maternal death, an internal inquiry from that hospital or trust is done. Okay, to like root cause analysis and all these things should be they usually performed. Now they have given different different death in these talks, but there is nothing is important actually. Only thing these numbers I found out that they may ask. So amniotic fluid embolism incidence in UK is around 2 per lakh deliveries. Okay, two amniotic fluid embolism per 1 lakh deliveries. Okay, and the death percentage is 20%. Okay, so of those 20% die. Okay, so these are the 2 percentages what I found important in that talk. So this completes your maternal autopsy talk. Then we will discuss this placental histopathological abnormalities. Okay, so placental histology, in which cases it should be done and in which cases it is not indicated. So essential placental examination is essential in case of any stillbirth, either antepartum or intrapartum. In case of late miscarriage, severe fetal distress requiring NICU admission, prematurity less than 30 weeks, fetal growth restriction, that is FGR less than 3rd percentile, fetal hydrops, and maternal pyrexia more than 38 degree. So all these cases, placental examination is required. It can be done either in case of prematurity, that is more than 30 weeks, 30 to 36 weeks, abduction, congenital malformation, rhesus immunization, morbidly adherent placenta, twins, and multiple pregnancies, abnormal placental shape, two-vessel cord, prolonged rupture of membranes, GDM, group B streptococcus infection, any preeclampsia, maternal coagulopathy, or substance misuse. So all these cases it can be desirable. So no need to remember that. But remember in which cases it is essential. That is more important. So stillbirth, late miscarriage, severe fetal distress. That you should remember because you may think that it is not required. So severe fetal distress, any prematurity less than 30 weeks. This you remember. So prematurity less than 30 weeks, FGR less than third percentile, hydrops and pyrexia. And where it is not required is cholestasis of pregnancy, pruritus of pregnancy, hepatitis B, HIV, other maternal diseases with normal pregnancy outcome, placenta previa, PPH, polyhydramnios, and normal pregnancy. In these cases, it is not required. Now you can see this is a normal placental villus structure, okay? And this is abnormal placental villus structure where it is a distal hypoplasia, distal villus hypoplasia. So usually this placental pathology is identified in 50% of the stillbirth cases, okay? So placental pathology is responsible for 50% of stillbirth cases. What are the findings which you can get on placental histological examination? So there are these 6 things you should remember, and the talk is totally about all these 6 things. One is maternal vascular malperfusion. Second is massive perivillous fibrin deposition. Third is fetal thrombotic vasculopathy. Fourth is villitis of unknown etiology. Fifth is villus dysmaturity and chorioamnionitis. So now we can see in which condition these pathologies can be observed. So maternal vascular malformation. It is usually because of result of abnormal spiral artery association, abnormal spiral artery blood flow association. So most commonly, as you can see, it can be present in preeclampsia, okay? And here the features is agglutinated villi, increased syncytial knots, distal villus hypoplasia. So distal villus hypoplasia is terminal villus deficiency. It is associated with hypoxia and fetal growth restriction. Umbilical arteries absent or reverse flows. Microscopic features include absence of terminal villus side branches. So basically it is a villus hypoplasia that you should remember. And it occurs usually with preeclampsia and fetal growth restriction. That 2 things you should remember. Preeclampsia, fetal growth restriction, and it is a distal villus hypoplasia. So these 2 things you should remember for maternal vascular malperfusion. Next thing is massive perivillous fibrin deposition. It is associated with recurrent miscarriage, fetal growth restriction, stillbirth. So most cases of stillbirth they are associated with massive perivillous fibrin deposition and neonatal neurological morbidity. It is usually characterized by excessive fibrin and fibrinoid matrix surrounding at least 30% of villi. The macroscopically here the placenta appears yellowish in color, stiff and thick. It is a stratoGSD, remember well. So placenta appears yellowish, thick and stiff in case of massive perivillous fibrin deposition. And the maternal surface appears corrupted with loss of cotyledons. So there will be loss of cotyledons. It can appear like uniform shape. And microscopic features are net-like patterns of fibrinoids that completely cover the villi. This leads to degeneration of syncytial trophoblast and obliteration of fetal vessels. Here the most important thing that you should remember is it is a high rate of recurrence. It is around 12 to 78% rate of recurrence. So recurrence is observed in massive perivillous fibrin deposition. It is usually associated with recurrent miscarriage. So there is association with APL also. Okay. Now fetal thrombotic vasculopathy. It is usually associated with cord abnormalities. Remember well, each one you have to remember one thing. So first is maternal vascular malperfusion associated with preeclampsia, fetal growth restriction. Perivillous fibrin deposition usually associated with stillbirth, recurrent miscarriage, APLA. Fetal thrombotic vasculopathy is usually associated with cord abnormalities like hypercoiled cord entanglement, and long cord. So it can be also associated with hypercoagulable state, endothelial cell injury, which is caused by cord abnormalities, okay, or cord entanglement. Now villitis. So villitis of unknown origin, it is usually a chronic inflammation and T cell infiltration, okay. So chronic inflammation and T cell infiltration is found in villitis. As you can see, it is inflammation. It is basically, it is not due to infection, but it is mostly due to autoimmune diseases. It is due to because of graft versus host reaction. Okay, and there is a higher incidence in women who have received donor ovum. Okay, or because of suspected, so who have received the ovum donation, and it is also associated with autoimmune disorders. So autoimmune disorders is villitis of unknown etiology. Villus dysmaturity, it is found in maternal diabetes. Remember well. So venous dysmaturity is found in maternal diabetes. There is terminal villi, they are enlarged, increased number of capillaries and macrophages, also increased vasculosyncytial membrane. Okay, so it disturbs the exchange of oxygen and other nutrients. So these are basically 5, and the last one is chorioamnionitis. So it is a placental inflammatory immune process. It is defined as inflammatory process affecting the chorion and amnion. So grade 1, there is small clusters, individual and small clusters of neutrophils. And grade 2, there is a more than presence of 3 or more than 3 microabscesses. So grade 1 and grade 2 chorioamnionitis. And you know this is usually associated with the KROM. And it can be also associated with villitis and phenicitis, that is inflammation of umbilical cord. So this is regarding the all placental histopathological abnormalities. So this finishes your that this placental abnormalities talk also. So now we will discuss the question, that is the strategy questions. So first is 30-year-old woman. She has a stillbirth at 36 weeks of gestation. The fetus was growth restricted, weighing only 2 kgs. The placenta reported as maternal floor infarction, that is massive perivillous fibrin deposition. What typifies the diagnosis on examination of the placenta? Yes, so it is massive perivillous fibrin deposition. Externally, it is a thick, yellowish and stiff placenta. Answer is E. Okay. So just go through all these 5 and their important features. So massive perivillous fibrin deposition is thick and stiff placenta. Then another thing, so everything there is some association. Villitis is associated with autoimmune disease. Then fetal thrombotic vasculopathy, it is associated with cord abnormalities. Okay, so all that you have to. Venous dysmaturity is associated with diabetes mellitus. So this thing, and venous dysplasia or hypoplasia, it is associated with PIH and fetal growth restriction. Now the next question, the villitis of unknown origin, there is yes. So villitis, it is autoimmune disease. So it is chronic inflammation with T cell infiltration. Answer is D. Villitis, it is autoimmune. It is not related to the infection. It is the D, T cell infiltration. A 29-year-old woman died from suspected drug overdose. Which sample must be collected from toxicological analysis? Yes, it is blood, urine and vitreous fluid. Okay, it is blood, urine and vitreous fluid. Answer is B. What does high mast cell tryptase levels in blood of a mother who died of labor indicates? It's very correct. So it is anaphylactic reaction to the drugs. Okay. So this finishes our talk discussion for today. So now we will stop here. Bye for today.
Ma'am,
Yes.
yesterday
Yes.
we requested Dr. Jyoti regarding the embrace discussion, ma'am. A short,
Actually,
10 or 15 minutes.
she was, yes, actually she has to do it, take that. She hasn't, she didn't complete it.
No, I think she forgot in that the